Hey folks, this is your Silver Nitrate Witch Isabelle popping in just briefly before we start to apologize for some weird audio stuff in this episode. I don't know why, but my desk was extremely clicky during this recording, and you can hear it make a little clicky noise in the background basically every time I shift in my seat. So apologize if that's what you're hearing. I hope it doesn't detract from your listening experience, and thanks for being patient with us. All right, enjoy the episode.
Drive the highway down the moon, past the billboard where you see me, ask the people for their king.
Welcome back to the Silver Nitrate Witches Movie Review Brew, the podcast where we talk about how we talk about movies, and we are your Silver Nitrate Witches. I'm Isabelle Lang. I'm a writer, academic editor, and tarot reader.
And I'm Laura Valenza. I'm film editor at the Brooklyn Rail and also a writer.
And today we're getting a little medieval, a little fantastical. And we are...
A little enchanted, dare I say?
A little enchanted, exactly. And we're going to talk about the Anne Hathaway film, as is our theme this season, Ella Enchanted.
Yay! We're going to Frell.
We're going to Frell. I forget the name of the kingdom seat, but that also
Lumiere.
Lumiere.
I think it's Lumiere.
I've read this book enough times. You think I would know, and I don't.
It sounds a lot like the author's name, so I might also be confusing that with her name.
Her name is Levine.
Okay, so I think it's Lumiere.
Sure.
Okay.
We
did our research.
I remember Frell. Frell is easy.
Yeah, because it's Ella of Frell.
Ella of Frell. Okay, so released in the spring of 2004, I believe April, if I'm remembering the date exactly. Ella Enchanted is a film loosely based, as we've been saying, on the 1997 novel of the same name by Gail Carson Levine, and is a reimagination of the classic Cinderella story. I just was, because as I was reading through some of the reviews, just on Friday, it occurred to me I hadn't looked up the rating yet. It is rated PG for crude language and social drinking. I don't know why social drinking just felt like a hilarious rating tool, because it literally never occurred to me that would be the case, but it is.
Well, I mean, there is a fairy who actually gets an FWI.
This flying while intoxicated.
Yes.
Bless her. It is directed by Tommy O'Haver. He's got a few projects under his belt. The only one that I was recognize the name of is The United States of Terra, which I've never actually seen, but I've just heard the title before in other articles because it was created by Diablo Cody, who did Jennifer's Body. So I have no idea what United States of Terra is about, but I like Diablo
Sounds
Cody,
like it might be up your alley, though.
Right, exactly. It was produced by Susan Miller. She's a children's media producer, does a couple of different kinds of children to young adult projects of different media genres, and co-written by a number of screenwriters. The two that are most noteworthy are Karen McCullough, who wrote 10 Things I Hate About You, House Bunny, The Ugly Truth, She's the Man, and Kristen Smith, who worked with Karen McCullough on the script for Legally Blonde.
Yes, I remember talking about those two because they are our dream screenwriter team.
Yes, and I had no idea they did all of these other great stuff. I know you love House Bunny. I love She's the Man. It was just a great little fun thing that I did not know was attached to this film.
Isabelle.
Natalie.
That's a House Bunny reference for anybody who's confused right now.
Okay, so the initial budget for Ella Enchanted was $31 million, and the film was considered a bit of a box office bomb its first weekend. It only made about $6 million the opening weekend, and it grossed about $27 million worldwide. In the time since, though, it's become kind of a cult classic. Fans are really big into celebrating the characters and costumes at various cons, as well as Ren fairs doing Ella Enchanted vibes of the medieval mixed with the early aughts fashion. I was seeing on some socials is kind of a popular thing to do at Renaissance fairs, which I had no idea about, and I now may be trying to work into my outfit for the Ren fair this year, so that's gonna be fun.
I have to be honest, I always thought Ren fairs were a little dorky and cringy, but that kind of makes me want to participate.
Have you ever been to one?
I have not. Actually, when I was a kid, I really wanted to go, and then it just became something I sort of lost interest in.
There are definitely some people, and like I hate to be like, there are some people who go who are dorky and cringy. But like I'm saying, like, your estimation of it is not entirely inaccurate, but it's also just real fun. There's good food. It's just a good time. You don't have to dress up either, but like, also, if you could dress up as Ella of Frell, why wouldn't you? Right?
Well, actually, I do actually really like her outfits because they're kind of like medieval hippie.
Yes!
But I actually really like Lucinda's pink two-piece outfit.
You could absolutely be Lucinda and go to a Ren fair, and people would get the joke. It's great. Okay. So setting us in the time of, that era of films in 2004, other movies that came out that year were kind of a funny, wild mix. So on the one hand, we've got the ones that kind of, I think, go like hand in hand, same vibes with Ella Enchanted, like 13 Going on 30, Mean Girls, 50 First Dates, The Prince and Me, Cinderella Story, the Hilary Duff movie, so like another Cinderella reimagining, and Shrek 2. Which a lot of critics will say, like, Ella Enchanted's got, like, a little bit of Shrek, a little bit of The Princess Bride. It's a very common way to refer to it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Shrek 2 because I actually ended up doing a little research into this subgenre of film, and I have comments.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
For later.
Because I don't have anything for the... Okay, this is going to be great. Okay. But then on the other hand, we've got Starsky and Hutch, which I specifically wanted to mention as kind of a throwback to our Get Smart, like, movies in the early aughts made from old TV shows kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Kill Bill Volume 2, which Laura has never seen because she got so mad at me for making her watch the first one and only to find out that we did not, in fact, kill Bill at the end of it and refused to watch the second one.
The title lied, okay? It lied. It just did.
And to my knowledge, you've never seen the second one yet.
No, I have
so
not.
There you go.
I'm still mad at Volume 1.
Okay, Hellboy, Dawn of the Dead, the iconic banger Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, and Passion of the Christ.
Wait, is Monsters Unleashed the live-action one?
There's two live-action ones.
Oh,
there's the Spooky Island one. I forget. I think that's the name of it. The Mystery Island.
I don't remember. I saw them both, but I don't remember.
The sequel's much better. Anyway.
Okay.
And then Passion of the Christ, which in the spring was the
top that has a lot to do with Ella Enchanted.
It was the top earner in the spring, but it only finished third overall in earnings that year after Shrek 2 and Spider-Man 2 coming in clutch. Tobey Maguire. Love it.
Love it. Is I've never seen Passion of the Christ, but is that the, like, crazy Mel Gibson movie that is kind of anti-Semitic?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so glad for you that you never had to watch that movie, because when it came out, it was, like, the pinnacle moment of literally every church event I ever went to for the next, like, 5 to 6 years. Yes. Are you? Oh my God, Laura! There are so many moments where we just have these, like, it's so funny that I grew up very Catholic and you grew up very non-religious at all. Mm-hmm. We would go, like, anytime there would be, like, any kind of evening or overnight, like, youth teen church event, at some point they would put on Passion of the Christ. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this fucking movie.
Okay, I don't really know anything about this movie, but my impression of it, though, was that it's, like, very violent.
Yes, it is the story of Jesus being nailed to the cross and then coming back. It's to life. It's that whole thing. And they would do an Easter vigil at my church where you stayed overnight, and they would just replay it on a big screen TV all night long, over and over again.
I am learning that I should not underestimate Louisiana, because just when I think I have learned the craziest thing that has ever happened in that state, I learned something new.
It's a little crazier. It's not just Louisiana. This has been like a church phenomenon since the movie came out. It's so weird.
Oh, okay.
I just listened to a couple episodes of one of my favorite podcasts, Digging Up the Duggars, where they do a great breakdown of, like, the weird fuck-ass production and creation of this movie. I don't remember the episode numbers of it, but if you're curious, you should go give them a listen. They're great.
Oh, now I'm very curious.
Okay, so back to Ella Enchanted, though. Okay, so this movie stars several names we might recognize. So we've got Hugh Dancy as Prince Charmant, or Char, as he's often referred to. He's in, a lot of us probably recognize him as, I forget the name of the character from Hannibal. Will Graham, that's the name of the character. We have Cary Elwes as King Edward, coming back to his sort of like fantasy role after Princess Bride years later.
I do not like him as a brunette, though.
Me too! I'm so glad you said that. I had in my watch notes, I was like, it's so weird that he's not blonde. Oh my god. Okay, speaking of blondes, though, we have Joanna Lumley as the Wicked Stepmother, and Lucy Punch as one of the Wicked Stepsisters. Laura, do you recognize her from any other similar roles?
I do. I know I've seen her in, like, actually, I think a lot of similar roles, but I can never quite place her whenever I see her.
So you specifically would probably recognize her as, my mistake. I thought she was an Ever After, but she's not. She has, however, played the evil stepsister role in a total of 4 different Cinderella stories.
Wow, that's really fascinating to me.
I think after Ella Enchanted, it just kind of became a bit like they were like, oh, well, we're doing a Cinderella story. We have to get Lucy Punch in here. So
she's
she was
really good at it.
Right? So she was one of the evil stepsisters in just Cinderella, a TV movie that came out in 2000. She's Hattie in Ella Enchanted. She is another one in Fairy Tales, Cinderella, that came out in 2008, I'm not familiar with. And she was also one of the evil stepsisters from Into the Woods. So the whole movie is not a Cinderella story, but in the Cinderella storyline of Into the Woods, she was also an evil stepsister. So I love that journey for her and for her career. We've also got Minnie Driver as Ella's friend and confidant Mandy. And, the owner of the iconic pink two-piece that Laura loves, Vivica A. Fox, as Lucinda, the fairy godmother. So, lots of cool folks in here.
Well, you're forgetting somebody. Heidi Klum is in this movie.
Oh, shit. Yeah, she's the giant, isn't she?
Yes.
Oh, my God. I completely ran out of my head until you brought it up, which is so funny because I love the Giants. We'll talk about them.
I love the Giants too.
Oh my god!
Not the football team, the Ella Enchanted.
Specifically,
characters.
the Giants from Ella Enchanted.
Nothing against the football team, just
sure
clarifying.
But
yeah.
So I was going to go into the plot. Do you have any other details or questions about just sort of the basic, production vibes or?
No, I just wanted to make sure we got Heidi Klum.
We got Heidi Klum in there. Mm-hmm. All right. So, as far as the story goes, I really forgot a lot of this story because I love the book so much. I read it over a dozen times probably when I was a kid. This is the first time I've watched the movie in years, and so I forgot a lot of shit happens in this movie. I think they actually do quite a good job of packing in. Not all of the details. They change quite a few things from the book. We'll talk about it. But I think they do a good job of packing in so many things that a lot of other productions would have lost. So we open up on a fairy tale kind of kingdom. Narrator and all telling us the story. Narrator Eric Idle. He is from all of the Monty Python things you might recognize him as.
And he pops in as funny little side character. Like,
yes.
It's not just a voiceover narrator. He's like biking by and delivering the mail. And he's the portrait painter. Yeah, he does little funny pop-ups in random places.
It's a very Monty Python-esque narrator, which is why I felt the need to bring that up. Yeah.
And I would say that this movie probably owes a lot to Monty Python. I think what I'm going to call the medieval mod movies owe a lot to Monty Python.
Yes, it's very Monty Python in the search for the Holy Grail in the humor of things and the interesting contemporary elements it combines. So the narrator is telling us the beginning of the story. We zoom in on baby Ella of Frell, who is the main adventurer. Her mother and maid Mandy rush to hide her out of the way as her fairy godmother Lucinda flies in to do her standard fairy godmother duty, as is done in this world, and bestow upon the newborn a gift, because apparently Lucinda gives the worst gifts. Yes, so they're hiding her.
Mandy's not just any old maid. She's a house fairy.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
So she's got some magic as well, but not the same kind of magic
Not very
as Lucinda.
good. Not good magic.
And she's
she
also
can't
not very good at
undo Lucinda's gift.
Lucinda finds Ella, even though they try to hide her, and grants her the gift of obedience. So for the next few minutes, we see how this plays out as Ella ages. Someone tells her at a party, like a birthday party, to stuff her face. So she digs her fingers into the cake and does just that. Her mother commands her not only to practice her instrument, but to be quick about it and hurry up. And so we watch Ella zoom down the stairs in a speedy whirl. Realizing quickly that this could be dangerous, Mandy and Ella's mother decide to keep this a secret. And then on her deathbed, her mother commands Ella that she must also keep it a secret and she can never tell anyone. So we fast forward a bit to Ella's young adulthood, where the typical Cinderella story as we recognize it picks up. Her father remarries to the wicked stepmother, Joanna Lumley. The stepsisters are cruel. Hattie is kind of unwittingly using Ella's curse to her advantage for a while.
Yes, including making her steal a pair of glass slippers, which is a clever nod.
Clever nod. So that is after she realizes that Ella always does what she's told. She kind of starts to pick up on the fact that she doesn't understand it fully, but she kind of picks up like, okay, if I tell her to do something, she'll usually do it, making her steal things, such as the glass slippers. She makes her be truly mean and say some really awful things to her best friend. She sends Ella away from an event where Prince Charmant is going to be present so that Ella doesn't keep embarrassing her with protests of Ogreside and the Giant's land grab. I don't know why this was one bit from the movie I remembered so fully, but as they're doing that bit, I started to chant with them, say no to Ogreside, stop the giant land grab. Like, I remembered their little protester chant so exactly. It was the strangest thing. And these are just some of the political things going on in the background of the story. While she's on her way home, Ella literally runs into the prince, who is running away from all of his crazed fans. They kind of become friendly. Ella realizes that night, after all of this has unfolded, that staying at home with Hattie has become too dangerous, and so she decides to run away and track down Lucinda to make her reverse the curse.
Reverse the curse.
Mandy, the house fairy, gives her a book, a magical book to help her on her journey, who is also her boyfriend, because Mandy accidentally turned her boyfriend into a book, because that makes sense. His name is Benny.
Whoops.
He's great.
And he would have been thicker.
That's true.
As he says at some point.
So while she's on the road trying to track down Lucinda, Ella encounters other magical creatures, including Slannon, who is an elf. Elves, as another part of the weird political rules, are only allowed to become entertainers in this country, but he does not want to be an entertainer. He wants to be a lawyer.
They could also participate in tomfoolery.
Tomfoolery, yes. They also are encountered by a handful of ogres who almost have them for lunch. Char, again, runs into them, literally, and saves them. And they also meet a family of giants celebrating a wedding, that's the place Ella hopes to find Lucinda. She learns upon arriving Lucinda is gone, likely back home to what conveniently happens to be the capital city of the kingdom that we can't quite remember the name of.
Lumiere,
Lumiere.
I think.
You know what? I got a computer here. We can Google it.
We can.
Okay, here it says the kingdom in the Ella Enchanted movie is named Curia. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the country in the book.
I feel like that's not what it sounded like what they were saying in the movie, and I just watched it last night.
Exactly. Lamia. I found it.
Lamia. Okay.
Lamia.
I was close.
Okay.
I added an R.
You did. Okay, so because they know that Char offers to escort them back there since he's got to go back for his coronation ceremony anyway, and he wants to introduce Ella to his uncle Edgar, the King Regent, to speak to him about some of her really interesting political thoughts and ideas about the poor state of magical creatures across the land that he's learned of and that he wants to make a difference with. Meanwhile, back at the farm in Lamia, back at the castle, we learn that Edgar has been actually vying for the throne for decades. He is the one who killed Char's father and blamed ogres, creating all of these restrictive laws about magical creatures to begin with. to earn himself more money and power. He actually has plans to kill Char as well, so he can keep the throne to himself. He's got an evil snake counterpart because it's a fairy tale. Of course, he has to have an evil snake counterpart. He recruits Hattie to learn more about Ella to see if he can use her to his advantage. And Hattie tells her, Ella always does as she's told. So he decides to use the curse to command Ella to murder Char that night at the coronation ball as he proposes marriage to her in the Hall of Mirrors, which is very convenient because Ella, through the power of true love, looks at herself in the mirror, commands herself to no longer be it. She drops the dagger. It works. The curse is broken. Boom. So Char is safe, but only in time for Edgar's guards to rush in and arrest her because it obviously looked like she was about to kill him, because she kind of was. Slannon, the elf, and some of the other friends they've made along the journey. So one of the ogres, Heidi Klum, the giant, they, band together to break her out. The whole crew crashes into the coronation to save the day. Edgar's plan was to poison Char with his own crown, but it backfires as Edgar, in like a fit of rage, says like, "This kingdom belongs to me," and puts the crown on his own head because it's, a silly fairy tale and he has to. We fast forward a bit to see Char officially crowned king, and then he and Ella getting married, ending it all with a fun song and dance, as the narrator tells us is required for this sort of story.
Yes. And
really got anything?
Well, speaking of the song and dance, we talked about how it's kind of like early aughts version of medieval, but it's also weirdly disco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite
and
a bit.
And a little hippy dippy disco medieval mod.
Yeah. I remember when I was first doing, because I started to do research and just kind of get all my shit together before I rewatched it, and I kept seeing this advertised as a jukebox musical, and I was like, what? And then I watched it and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's...
There's at least 2 musical numbers.
Well, there's 3, because the elves do the Let Us Entertain You, and then we have Somebody to Love, the Queen song at the Giants. We've got the big number at the end. And you're right, they're all kind of that same, hippie disco-y vibe. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, as we've kind of already hinted at a little bit, that even though it's a fairy tale story and setting, what is quite fun about the whole plot that's unique to the film, not to the book, is that modern and contemporary things have been kind of entwined into it. So the event that Char is at is the opening of a shopping mall, complete with a wooden escalator. The fashion of the young girls is, as we said, a mix of early aughts, shiny, sparkly kind of graphic t-shirt vibes and medieval clothing. Char is treated like a pop star. I kept imagining Hercules in the cartoon, in the animated film. Lucinda, this is my favorite bit, is seen shopping for the Giant's wedding at a crockery barn. And Ella moans, well, which one? They're all over the kingdom. I loved that. Ella, Hattie, and Olive attend Frell Community College, which is super cute. And then actually my favorite is that the wicked stepmother, when they're in Lamia for the coronation, gets a skin treatment that is described as being made of bat feces and ox blood that they call batox.
Yes. And I also like too that her father in the beginning is trying to find, her father is perpetually unemployed or underemployed.
Her mother came from family money, and so he didn't really have to work.
Yeah, so he's looking in the classified ads for a job, and he circles abacus programmer.
I forgot about that. That was so funny.
Yes.
Because in the book, that's why he marries Dame Olga, is because they've got some money, and that's why Dame Olga marries him,
that
because
in the movie too.
She thinks that he's got money, and it turns out they were both wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we dive in, thoughts or feelings? What's the vibes?
I have a lot of thoughts or feelings. I mean, so I read the book too when I was little, and I remember the book was really good. I remember adoring the book and adoring the movie. I liked the weird offbeat vibes of the movie. I think something I also just watching this again last night, I was like, there is a really good chemistry between Anne Hathaway and Hugh Dancy, and I really appreciate chemistry. And I think the early aughts were really good at good chemistry and love stories. And that's something that is still very enjoyable to me, even as an adult. There were also fun things that I did not get as a kid that I got watching it now. Like,
For example.
Slannon, the elf who wants to be a lawyer, at some point when he's trying to defend Ella after she's been arrested, he yells, "I'm gonna mess up the line because I don't actually know that much about OJ, but I know it's a reference to OJ where he does, like, if the gauntlet doesn't fit."
If the gauntlet doesn't fit, you must acquit. Yeah.
Yes, instead of the glove.
The glove. Yeah,
Yes.
I remember. I had that originally in my list of, like, early aughts references. Was like, there's an OJ reference. I don't remember why I took it out. I figured we would bring it up at some point again. Yeah.
Well, we made it.
I remember, yeah, I absolutely did not get that. I think the last time I watched this, and I actually had to pause and go, wow, okay.
Yeah. While I was watching it again, too, I did find myself thinking about Shrek a lot. I was like, this is very much a similar vibe and similar type of humor as Shrek, though I don't think it's as pointed or successful as Shrek. Shrek is, like, really good satire, and I don't think this quite achieves that. But I think that that's something that's really interesting. And then I did, because I started looking it up, because I started thinking about all of these movies, and I was like, was there, like, a little moment here, a little, like, what I'm calling the medieval mod genre, subgenre?
Modieval,
like, a little
if you will.
Modieval.
I can't take credit for that. There's a creator on YouTube, Rachel Maxey, who does, like, crafting and DIY, and she had a video where she made mod-evil outfits. So she took, like,
Cute.
Medieval styles and mixed it with, like, mid-century modern.
Interesting. I like it.
I'll send you the video. It's cute.
Okay. So there was Shrek, and so Shrek 2 came out the same year in 2004.
Yes.
And Shrek 1 had come out a couple years earlier in 2001. Also in 2001 was A Knight's Tale.
Yes!
Which I think is also a very similar
Yes,
vibe.
some people also bring up A Knight's Tale in here. Absolutely.
And then I would even say that we could go back a little bit further to 1998, and this is kind of an interesting ever after. Like, I mean, the Cinderella. So that's something that I want to think about is, like, this burst of, like, modern medieval movies happening in this, like, long 90s, early aughts moment. And also, what is it with our fascination with the Cinderella story? Because there are so many of them. So I think those are, I don't know that I want to do that, like, now. I kind of want to hear the reviews, but I want to, like, put that out there as things to think about.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I think it's interesting that even as, like, a young person who loved the book, you had such a love for the movie, because I really resisted the movie when I was a kid. I was such a lover for the book, and I could tell from the trailers they were going in this more, like, silly, campy direction. And it wasn't just, like, that I didn't love about it. It was just that I could tell it was going to be so different. And I, as a kid, was very much the book was better truthist. And then now as an adult, I'm like, I can see them as two separate things and enjoy them both. But I did not have that mindset when I was, like, 12.
Yeah, I can't really remember the book very well at this point, but I was wondering, was it kind of like Princess Diaries book versus movies, where the book, because I want to say the book goes a little deeper into some of the issues that the movie kind of takes a more campy, easy exit out of talking about.
What issues do you mean? Because there's, like, nothing political in the book.
Oh, there's nothing political.
No, there's nothing about like the ogre side and the giant land grab. The whole situation with, like, Edgar vying for the throne and trying to murder Char, that's not present. Like, it's purely focused on Ella and, like, the little adventures she has. So it goes more into depth of a lot of her adventures. Like, the community college bit is, like, she goes to finishing school, and there's a whole handful of chapters that are, like, just her trying to survive in this atmosphere where she's basically treated like a scholarship kid, and everybody knows that she shouldn't be there. And then her leaving and running away to try and find Lucinda is like a half of the story of her getting into fights with, like, the ogres and stuff. She, she meets Char, but, like, doesn't go back to the kingdom with him. She ends up stuck working for her stepmother again. Like, it's much more a traditional Cinderella story.
Okay.
Than the film is, which is why I think as a kid I was so hesitant, because I could tell it was going to be so different
Okay.
And I was like, this is not the story I want to see. Even though
I don't remember the book at all then.
I reread it like 3 or 4 years ago. That's the only reason it's so like fresh on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I remember loving the book though, and I think I remember liking the book more than I liked the movie.
It's a good update on a Cinderella story, I will say. Yeah,
I think there's a chance too that I actually saw the movie and then read the book, which might be why I liked the movie, because that might have been my first introduction to it. But yeah, okay.
I did remember seeing it as a kid and not really vibing with it so much because I was really comparing them. But like, as I said, as I've grown, I've been able to really appreciate the movie as its own thing. And like really love the fun direction it goes into, the sort of political element it goes into. One of the things we talked about with Princess Diaries was that like it didn't quite go as far as it could have with Mia and Lily being as like politically vocal as they were in the novels. I don't know that this accomplishes that really well, but it at least, you know, does throw some things in there that we didn't get.
Yeah, I think the political elements of the movie, on the one hand, are really funny and part of the satire. On the other hand, I think they're kind of the parts of the story that have aged the least well because they feel very flimsy and very shallow, and and it doesn't really, you know, and it feels like this whole, it's interesting too, just in all the political things that have unfolded in the recent years. I mean, you know, like we talked about, Ella lacks the power of choice, which in like a post-Roe world is like particularly difficult to watch and be like, yeah, we can be lighthearted and campy about this. And, you know, it was hard for me not to be like, I can see the 2026 version of this movie for adults that takes it to really dark but probably really interesting places. You know, or even like, you know, trans people lacking the choice of gender affirming care, and, you know, and then like with the ogres and the giants and everything, there's obviously, and, you know, the thing that she's told she must say to her friend is that she can't be friends with an Aorthian, which they don't really go into the movie.
Right, there's a lot more of that in the book,
Yeah, but, you know, clearly there's some sort of like racial undertone there, and that's not, it's all like kind of like gestured at in a way that doesn't feel particularly meaningful, and that I don't feel like has aged in a particularly interesting way at this point. Like in some ways I almost wish they had just stuck with the book and done it very like to Ella's insular world. Like sometimes there's more power in like diving deep into one character than there is in like it felt like there's parts of the movie that felt like it was trying too hard to be like political and interesting in the way that Shrek was, in a way that I think Shrek achieves. Like Shrek managed to walk the line of being an adult and a children's movie and actually having really,
I think we can all agree that Shrek is like peak cinematic beauty, and we will never have another movie as good as that.
Yes, burps and all.
Yes. So this is interesting because in an interview with Anne Hathaway for Rebecca Murray of About.com, of all things, she herself talked about an earlier script of the film that was actually a lot closer to the book. She herself also read the book and loved it when she was in her teens. But she mentioned that she enjoyed the changes a lot because the film kind of makes fun of itself for being a fairy tale. And I think, you know, that's what clearly works so well in like Shrek, is that it super makes fun of itself for being in like this fairy tale world and combining all of these like modern elements. Like I keep thinking of in Shrek 2 when they go to the fairy godmother's factory and they get in by saying like they're from HR. You know, but I think where Shrek succeeds is that it leans into like the genericness of all of the fairy tale elements, whereas Ella Enchanted is like, we're making fun of it being a fairy tale, and also there's this very specific fairy tale story that we're looking at. And I think it's a lot of those things are battling each other.
Yeah, I agree that when it's really focused on making fun of the fairy tale genre is when it's at its most successful. And I do think that's what's really interesting about Ella Enchanted and Shrek, is that they both really connect capitalist commodification with fairy tales. And it's
like
almost,
the mall is such a genius and fun bit.
Well, and where the glass slippers come in is she's stealing them from a store. They're for sale. The glass slippers are for sale. It's like the idea of the fairy tale is for sale, which I think, and they're both such American movies and so critical of American culture that it is this really interesting tie-in of, you know, the fairy tale of America and
Yes.
how it's a very capitalist fairy tale.
So, fun fact also about the glass slippers, they were actually made of glass. There were 4 pairs made for the film, and Hathaway broke them all.
Good job, Anne.
Sticking with this interview with Rebecca Murray, because I think, you know, it's a sweet introduction to Hathaway herself, which is, you know, she is the focus of our season. Murray writes, quote, Ella Enchanted is a captivating fantasy film full of romance and humor, headlined by Anne Hathaway and Hugh Dancy. Though at first glance, Ella Enchanted appears to be a movie strictly for teenage girls, mixing action, adventure, comedy, strong characters, and a love story, Ella Enchanted is hard to define and even harder to dismiss as simply a teen film. A pleasant surprise, there's a little something for all age groups and both sexes in this bewitching fairy tale, which I think is kind of what the conclusion we've come to.
Yeah. Agreed.
Hathaway in this interview went on to say that even though what she liked about Ella Enchanted was that it made fun of itself as a fairy tale, well, specifically she said, I liked that Ella Enchanted made fun of itself as a fairy tale and that Princess Diaries embraced being a fairy tale. She thought it was like these two interesting ends of the spectrum. She said after this, she was, quote, ready to hang up the tiara and put down the ball gown into storage.
That's fair.
And I think this is also perfectly portrayed at the end of Ella Enchanted, where in the final dance number, she rips off the bottom of her wedding crown and it transforms into a cute little mini dress while they're dancing around.
That's true.
Right?
Ella's growing up.
She is growing up. We'll talk about some of the movies she did after. We'll start and end with interviews that kind of focus on her career here, because I think it gives us an interesting look into the trajectory. So I want to take a little bit, not a detour exactly, but do a little something different than I usually do. And we're going to come right out of the gate with our good old friend Roger, friend of the pod.
Hey, Roger.
Hey, Roger Ebert, who gave this 3.5 stars and by all accounts fucking loved it. I cannot get a read on this man. I feel like every time I find another thing that he is reviewed that we are looking at, I don't know that I would say he contradicts himself, but like he contradicts what I am perceiving of him every fucking time. I don't understand his taste in film. I fear I never will.
You know, though, that's like making me love him more the more that we do this podcast, because it makes me believe that he really is honest about just what he likes and doesn't like. And I respect that. I respect somebody who's not just posturing because they think this is what they should like as a film critic or what they shouldn't like. I think that that's really cool. And I think more people should do that, because the other thing too is like, of course, we're all going to bring our own biases and personal tastes into film criticism. And I think that it's better to be honest about, this is just what I like as a person and this is why it resonated with me, than it is to pretend that that's not the case and act like your opinion is the gold standard.
This feels especially interesting to me, like right now at this moment, because I agree with you on everything you're saying. It's like I can't get a read on him, and I'm actually starting to kind of love that I can't get a read on him. And I'm starting to kind of love that, like, you know, we can't necessarily trust like what every critic is going to say, because some critics are just kind of panning things for the vibes or saying things that they think everybody is going to like. And for some reason, this feels especially perfect to me at this moment in time. We're recording this on February 15th. Happy late Valentine's, everyone.
Happy Galentine's.
Happy Galentine's. Everyone. 2 weeks ago, I went to my local Cinemark to go see Iron Lung, which was an entirely like independently produced, filmed, edited everything movie by YouTuber Markiplier, Mark Fishbacher, who is a video game YouTuber. This is based on a video game that he played and he loves. And it had like a 2-week theatrical release. He encouraged his fans, if they wanted to see it in their theaters, call and ask for it to be played. So like enough people in my town were like calling up the Cinemarks and the AMCs and saying, we're requesting that you play Iron Lung during its release. It was a huge deal. for like 3 days, it was not even 3 days. I think actually it was like one day. It was officially, according to box office numbers, listed as the #1 movie in America.
Oh, I love that story. I love it, a good underdog story. Okay.
Before it quietly disappeared from charts.
What happened? Where did it go?
No one knows. But it was, it ended up, when you do look at the final gross numbers, it did get beat out by Send Help, which I haven't seen that, but I really, really want to. It looks good.
It looked really gory.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't know anything about Iron Lung by any chance, do you?
No, I don't, actually. I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it's about.
Also pretty very gory. There is a lot of
okay.
blood. It is rated R specifically for the amount of blood that it has in it. So yeah, they're both pretty gory films. So I'm not surprised to Send Help, because it just had like a bigger production, more people, big names, Rachel McAdams, you know. But it was this weird thing where like the suspicion is Hollywood was like, this guy made this movie by himself, like in a warehouse that he rented for a month. We cannot let this stand. And so it was like quietly from charts. A lot of the other thing I want to bring up is that Melania also came out that same weekend, and it was being reported by certain news outlets as a box office smash, as being the #1, as earning like super amounts of money and being super popular. To be fair, it did make, I don't have the exact number here, but it was the highest grossing release of a documentary in its opening weekend. Yeah, unfortunately.
It didn't come anywhere close, though, to that $75 million budget they put into it.
Exactly. And the actual, like, if you go in and read the actual reviews on things, you know, it's entirely panned by a lot of people. So
yeah,
just
wait,
like,
give me a minute on that one.
Look it up, yeah.
Give me a minute on that.
So while you're looking into that, I just think it's so fascinating. But like this one was such kind of a box office bomb. We're looking at like a lot of the reviews. It's very polarized in its reviews of like, people either couldn't fucking stand Ella Enchanted and hated a lot of things about it, or just found it to be like, you know what, it's delightful and I think you'll enjoy it. And after all of this going on with all of these movies in that last weekend and Iron Lung and everything, I'm just like increasingly jaded about the movie industry. And all of this happening at the same time just felt so appropriate. But no, yeah, I think Send Help is very gory. I don't think you would enjoy it for that aspect. Or Iron Lung. You should probably not see either of them. But I really want to see Send Help. I like the idea of Rachel McAdams in a murderous rage. It feels like the way Regina George was always supposed to be.
Well, I can't find it, but I saw it on Instagram, and I have no idea, full disclosure, if this is a real review or not, but I'm pretty sure that the Instagram post about Melania reviews said that Roger Ebert called it, like, watching it was watching that movie was like walking across Legos while experiencing explosive diarrhea. And I think somebody else compared it to having bad syphilis.
Oh my god, I remember you said this, because then I sent back like, this is one of the rare times I agree with good old Roger.
Okay, so Belle, what would your review of Melania be? And no, I don't think you have to have watched it.
I'm gonna go with, I would just post an audio file, and it would be a clip of Tina Belcher going for like 5 minutes.
Melania.
Okay. Back to Roger. Okay, so ultimately, what he really appreciates is this spoofiness that we've been talking about. He likes the spoofiness leaning into the making fun of itself just as much as Hathaway does. He really especially also likes the mix of the medieval mix, as we've been calling it. He says, the look of the movie is delightful. Special effects, we are going to come back to special effects so many times. Special effects create a picture book kingdom in which the medieval mixes with the suburban. There is a mall, period. Like, that's in parentheses.
I love that that's a whole thought.
I like the casual way that the computer animated graphics are used with real foregrounds. Sure, it doesn't look as convincing as it did sometimes in Lord of the Rings, but a certain artifice adds to the style.
Oh yeah, the special effects are not, like, good in this movie.
No.
But they work for the vibe.
Exactly. And a lot of the people who are really on the it was fucking dumb end of the spectrum complain about how bad the special effects were. Of course, though, Roger can't leave Princess Diaries alone as well. He does say one of the charms in this movie is its goofiness, which extends to the songs. Oh. Wait, no, I don't have a... Why do I have something about Princess Diaries there? Because... Oh, okay. We're getting there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
One of the charms of the movie is its goofiness, which extends to the songs, which verge on sing-along chestnuts. What else would the elves sing after all but let us entertain you? And Anne Hathaway is, well, kind of luminous. She has this big smile, an open face, and here
Roger,
she's working...
just say it. She's totally luminous.
She's working with a witty and wicked plot instead of the wheezy contrivances of the Princess Diaries. We know he didn't like that one.
I'm sorry, Belle.
She looks like she's having fun. So does everyone, even the snake. This is the best family film so far this year.
It is a movie that feels like everybody's having fun. Yeah. Like even the evil villains, they're just so campy and so exaggerated. I was thinking about
There's somebody who talks about the campiness and like overdoneness of Edgar that Carrie Elways does, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
There's one of the evil stepsisters, Olive, the stupid one, has like the most ridiculous reaction to something at some point, and I found myself thinking about how fun would that be to be an actor, just being like, I'm gonna be as dumb and melodramatic and ridiculous as possible. Like it looked
okay, yes, I know what you're talking about when when she's like, do you notice that Hattie says, do you notice that Ella always does what she's told? And Olive goes, no. And then to like make fun of her sister, Hattie goes, Olive, do you notice that when the sun goes down, it gets dark outside? Like mimicking how stupid she is. And Olive says, that's because of Ella? It's so good. And I agree with you so much so. I ended up, after I watched it last week, I ended up the next day, I went to my friend's house. We're starting a D&D campaign and I'm so excited. And I ended up deciding...
Nerd.
I love you with I like going to the Ren Fair and playing Dungeons and Dragons.
It's okay. I can only make that joke because there are so many nerdy things Belle could hold over my head.
And I did. And I decided to make my character like there's a certain way you can break down the different elements of like your personality. Wisdom is one of them. And my wisdom out of a possible 15 I could have gotten, I gave it a score of 5 because I just wanted to be like a really unobservant bimbo, and I believe I was partially inspired by Olive.
Oh my god.
So I'm very excited. Okay, so understandably, so Rebecca Murray points out in...
If you go to a Ren Fair as Ella Enchanted, you should introduce yourself as Bella of Frell.
I do have a blue skirt and a white flowy peasanty top. I could make this happen. Okay, so understandably, a lot of folks are doing the same kind of work that Roger does and that Rebecca does, Murray does in her article about the similarity of like the roles of Mia Thermopolis and Ella of Frell. But it is important to note, I feel like I want to dive into that Anne Hathaway did more projects in between these two movies, despite the fact that a lot of folks seem fascinated with the idea that she did 2 like princesses in a row. As we talked about in our Princess Diaries episode, she appeared afterwards in The Other Side of Heaven. She also had a voice role. She did the English dub of a Ghibli film called The Cat Returns, which I've never heard of, but looked really cute. And she also played the character of Madeline Bray in a film production of Nicholas Nickleby. Now, to be fair, these all had a pretty limited release and didn't gross much. The Cat Returns had a pretty significant earning of over $50 million worldwide, but like the North American release with the English dub that like she would have been involved in contributed to like 1% of that. Like most of that money is probably coming from its release in Japan. So it's true that the next like big hit major production release after Princess Diaries was Ella Enchanted. I'm not trying to make any kind of huge discovery or cool point here other than like I wonder how I was writing all this before I started to do like my article research, and I was just like, I wonder how it feels to have kind of like 3 years of your work sort of glossed over.
Yeah, that's probably kind of annoying.
It
especially
contributed in any way towards like future career decisions she made.
It must have felt frustrating too to have like 3 years of work go by and still feel like you're only known as the princess.
Right. I
Yeah.
wonder, is this like an Arthur Conan Doyle thing where he was like so pissed that he was only famous from Sherlock Holmes?
But
what?
she could steal a move from Arthur Conan Doyle's playbook and kill Mia and Ella. That's what he tried to kill off
That's true.
Sherlock.
Yep, that's true.
And then people got so angry that apparently he brought him back to life. I think that's what happened.
Maybe she should have been in The Princess instead of Joey King.
That would have been really...
I like Joey King in that role. I think she does that well, but that would have been interesting.
I do too. I like her in that role too, but I think it would have given that movie some more depth if they had done something clever with the casting
Like a person
that.
playing a princess so many times. That would have been really neat, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to, we're going to start with the people who were on the this film is stupid end of the spectrum. Andrew Pulver of The Guardian gave the film...
Wait, let me guess. They all wanted it to be an adult movie.
They all wanted it to be directed by
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick, yeah. No. He gave the film 2 stars, and he continued this comparison of like Princess Diaries and Ella Enchanted. He says, if you can't get them one way, then get them another. With the Princess Diaries, Anne Hathaway proved so efficient at snaring the fickle small girl market that she's been given another go. This jokey, teen-inflected update of the Cinderella fairy story, with a touch of A Knight's Tale thrown in, which means that every now and then the cast break into awful cover versions of the lame songs we had all hoped been forgotten. I want to stop here for a second, because it didn't occur to me until I read this interview that I was like, oh wow, this is very A Knight's Tale. And I think it's more than just the songs. And first of all, I want to take a second to defend the songs in A Knight's Tale. I read this really great article that was like from the producers of like, the reason we did that sort of music in there was because like, obviously they would not have played this kind of music in the medieval times at these jousting tournaments, but they would have been playing music or singing they would have been singing songs that were popular at the time, that to the crowd evoked the same kind of excitement as
The boys are back in town.
Exactly, as playing that in a modern place. And so they were like, we wanted the audience to understand, like, that was the feeling of being at the jousting tournament. Yeah, it was like being at an NFL game or being at the Indy 500 and the good music and the excitement in the crowd. And I was like, that's genius. And I love how I think Ella Enchanted is also doing that in the same way.
I also appreciate that by doing music that doesn't fit with by being anachronistic, you're allowing the story to be free, to be more ridiculous or implausible. Like, you're not none of these movies are trying to be historical. They're just trying to be fun. And like, yeah, and I think that that's a nice gesture. Also, it's like a classic move in cinema to choose music that doesn't necessarily fit with the time. Like,
Bridgerton, hello.
Yeah, I guess we could use that, except that show is stupid.
No, I agree. Okay, I'm not calling Bridgerton stupid. Don't come at me, super fans. Laura's the one who said that. I don't really love it either, but
That's okay, you can come at me.
I do love that they put like the modern music, but they get like a string quartet to play it or something.
Right. I was going to try to defend the choice with more of like a good example of it, but there's the raindrops are falling on my head moment or falling on your head. I don't remember. Moment in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid when Catherine Ross is riding on Paul Newman's bicycle.
Oh my god.
That scene is so cute. And then they do like this hippie 70s rock song over it, which is obviously not appropriate to the Western times, but it's just so endearing.
Yes, it's delightful.
Yeah. However, I do think I've heard that a lot of critics did not like that they did that in Butch Cassidy. So there's always been haters. How are
you going to hate Butch Cassidy?
I know.
If I was going to let anyone rob this train, it would be you, Mr. Cassidy. Okay.
Well, those critics can just keep thinking. It's what they're good at.
Okay, Pulver goes on to say, Hathaway manages to hold things together pretty well. She's an engaging, enthusiastic presence, but almost everything around her is toe curling. This is going to be a theme of like the critics saying that like she's the only redeeming thing about the movie.
Wait, who is the only redeeming thing?
Anne Hathaway.
Oh, okay.
He also writes, Hugh Dancy is a smirking Prince Charming, ogres, giants, and elves abound. Joanna Lumley, Minnie Driver, Vivica Fox, and Eric Idle make painful cameo appearances. Laughs are few and far between. The elf who wants to be a lawyer gets a couple of good lines. I'm assuming he's referring to the OJ line. And there's a treacherous talking snake called, parentheses, wait for it, Heston.
I don't actually get that reference.
Yeah, me either. Okay, I have a little highlight that I wrote. Am I supposed to get this? I don't know what he means. Like, Charlton Heston? I don't know.
I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't get that one.
Okay. He actually likes the special effects. He says the filmmakers pile up on the special effects, which actually look pretty good, but by the time Anne and Hugh start up with Don't Go Breaking My Heart and the Wedding Feast finale, I'd had enough. Laughs are few and far between. There's some pretty funny bits in there.
I don't know. It's a pretty funny movie.
I think it's pretty funny.
Some of it's dumb, but some of it's pretty funny.
Some of it's really dumb, but I think that's the point. And like, I'm the first person also to say, like, I shouldn't have said that. I hate the argument of like, when I try to tell somebody I don't like something because of X, Y, and Z, and they go, well, that's the point. I hate that, because I'm like, okay, well then if that's the point, it was never going to be something I enjoyed anyway. But like, I'm not saying that that's what makes it bad. I'm just saying that's why I didn't like it. But like, he's saying like, this is what makes it bad.
See, and that's why I like that Roger Ebert seems to be somebody whose tastes are just his taste.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's like the most important thing. Like, I always find it really frustrating when people go, oh, I don't want to see that movie because it's getting bad reviews. And I'm like, I don't think it matters whether the reviews are good or bad. Like, I don't think that should be a determining factor in whether or not you're open to seeing something. I think you have to be able, but we don't teach critical thinking in this country anymore. But I think you should be able to read a review and understand that Roger Ebert is saying, I liked this movie because it did these things and those appeal to me. You can read, the decision shouldn't be, well, he liked it, therefore I should see it and I should try to like it. The decision should be, oh, well, he liked it because of those things, but those are things that I don't normally like. So this probably isn't a movie for me. Like, yes. That's the critical thought process that should be happening when engaging with criticism. And most people don't want to do that. They want the easy way out and they just want to know how many stars are you going to give it. And I think that that is part of the reason why we can't have good dialogues in this country.
Yes, I love that this is the point we come to every episode.
I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite rants.
I love it though. It's great. I like that. Like, we clearly have a consistent vibe, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm. We have themes of the podcast.
We have themes. We're complex. We contain multitudes. Mm-hmm. So more panning reviews continue with Bill Muller of the Garnet News Service. So I realized I saw somebody else from this same news service that it's either Garnet News Service or Gannett News Service.
Oh, it's Gannett.
Okay, because I was like, or it's two different ones, and I don't know.
I think they own a lot of big newspapers.
That's why, because I saw it again from a different author, and that's why I was like, ooh, maybe. Okay, so Bill Muller of the Gannett News Service comes right out of the gate with, it might be time for Anne Hathaway to start to worry about typecasting.
It sounds like she was already worried about that, because she had 3 years of trying to break the mold and couldn't get out of it. Yeah.
Later on, he says, Hathaway should please her young fans with Ella Enchanted, which is occasionally fun but too reliant on gimmicks and purloined plot lines to rank alongside the better kids' movies, none of which he names as like an example.
I really wish they would give more examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, it has a modern sensibility that will appeal to tweeners, but there's not much originality here. Can I just say, I hate people who use the word tween.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
I think it's roughly 9 to 12.
Okay. So we could say preteen? Because that's
Yeah, preteen probably makes more sense.
I hate tween. It's very infantilizing. And I get it, they're
It's
9
funny.
to 12, but still.
I never really felt that strongly about the word, but that's because I remember I first heard it when I think I was about 9 or 10. And my mother had told me, well, now you're a tween. And I was like, oh, I'm not a little kid. I'm a tween. So at that age, it felt empowering.
That's okay. That makes sense. I'll back up on what I said. Because honestly, I feel like I had the same experience, but with the term preteen. So that's fair. I'll back up on it. I don't hate tween quite so much. Okay. So he does highlight what we've already said a few times is pretty enjoyable, and I would say pretty original, but whatever, the mix of modern and medieval, saying the film is sprinkled with intentional anachronisms such as a daily paper, a wooden escalator, a shopping mall, and a reference to tabloid-style magazine Medieval Teen, which of course has Char on the cover, and Hattie has all of the posters that you take out from the magazine and you unfold, but there's the crease lines that will just never go away and the little hole in the middle of their face from you having to very gently remove the staple. I had so many of those. But then Mr. Muller does the unthinkable and goes after Carrie Elways.
Oh no!
Exactly.
Oh, no!
No.
I don't.
We don't love
in
the
this
brunette,
movie,
but that's it.
No.
He says, Elways, perhaps best known for playing the male lead in The Princess Bride, takes Edgar too far over the top, turning Ella Enchanted into a melodrama when he's on screen.
Well, I'm not sure that that's the actor's fault, and they're all playing this in a melodramatic way.
The whole thing is very melodramatic, and I would say that it'd be kind of boring if Edgar wasn't over the top and melodramatic.
Again, if you don't like melodrama,
Then
you should
don't
probably
watch it.
stay away from this movie.
Exactly.
We do not recommend it to you.
I'd also like to point out that he makes no comparison or typecasting kind of comment about Carrie Elways being in multiple fantasy fairy tale movies, but whatever. And then he goes after Elton John.
I mean, I can't help you there, Belle, because I'm really not an Elton John
Which
fan.
is fair, but I'm amazed that this man continued to have a career after calling Elton John's music tired.
Wait, which of the songs is an Elton John song?
Isn't it Don't Go Breaking My Heart?
Oh, is that?
I think.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't mind that song, actually.
Yeah. I was gonna say I understand if you don't like his career as a whole, but I'm sure there's some singles that you would hear and go, oh yeah, no, I like that. Okay, so he calls his music tired and then finishes up by saying, perhaps the most interesting thing about Ella Enchanted is, oh god, I forgot about this. Oh my god, Jesus fuck. Okay. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Ella Enchanted is the poster, so the film poster, the advertising, which features Hathaway in a peasant blouse and blue skirt. Rolled up a certain way, it looks just like the label on a bottle of St. Pauli Girl.
What is that?
So it's a beer brand that has a girl in a very skimpy, low-cut, very short skirt milkmaid outfit with big boobs and holding beer.
So basically, it looks like a centerfold to him.
And
Ew.
Fucking ew. I cannot.
Yeah, that's kind of a creepy comment.
The caps that I put the letters EW period in after this are not big enough to encompass how, the amount of ew I feel about that.
Yeah.
And it made me think of just the continual way that Roger was calling her too old to be in the Princess Diaries. I was like, these are the things we're concerned about? These are the things that we think are noteworthy? Seriously? Jay Stone of the Vancouver Sun gives the movie 2.5 stars, so half a star more than some of the others we've seen, with the headline, Cinderella with a postmodern twist. And even at some point says the line itself, Ella Enchanted is an updated version of Cinderella, a postmodern twist on an ancient story with lots of winks and nods to anachronisms. Then he seems to forget this very obvious comparison he has just made, and starts to describe the plot, saying, it would be difficult to imagine the younger audience at which this confection is aimed, accepting the notion of a young girl enslaved by a wicked stepmother and two scheming stepsisters. Why wouldn't she simply leave home or perhaps call Children's Aid? He just uses this as a setup to explain the whole obedience plotline, but I'm like, dude, you literally just called it a Cinderella story. That's the whole goddamn point. You are working for a national news source. You can make a better transition than this.
Well, also, she does leave home. That's the plot. The
exactly.
stepsisters and the stepmother crossing a line is the inciting incident to get her to leave home.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway. He also then goes on to take a hella weird, like, dunk/compliment on Anne Hathaway at one point, saying, Hathaway, whose enormous eyes and wide mouth evoke both Julia Roberts and a fawn at feeding time, is an appealing presence.
Ew, that makes me want to vomit. That is such a disgusting way.
Like, I get the Julia Roberts thing, because a lot of people will... She's got a very wide smile. And
No,
she's
she totally has a Julia Roberts smile.
A very big mouth laugh, like we all know from, like, Pretty Woman. Like, Julia Roberts and, like, her mouth, her smile, that's an understanding comparison.
But did we have to call it a wide mouth, though?
Yeah,
that's
like,
still
what
kind
the
of weird.
fuck?
That's so... It's like
another all caps
objectifying,
ew.
It's infantilizing, and it's doing so with a touch of bestiality.
Yeah. Ew. Just ugh. So he finishes up by, again, criticizing, this whole, like, the very point of the movie of, like, saying the ridiculousness is what makes it bad. When Ella Enchanted goes off the rails, it's from an overabundance, which I think we've agreed so many times is, like, that's what is the appeal for
it's campy,
viewers.
it's melodramatic.
So from an overabundance of magical beings and broad acting and of Eric Idle, the narrator whose rhyming couplets don't even scan. Like, and I was like, okay, look, I'll give him that one. Like, that's a sick burn.
I also appreciate that he had to actually do the work of checking whether or not they scanned.
Or an underdevelopment of the special effects that make the giants look as phony as the background road in some 1940s car chase scene, and of a sure-handed tone. O'Haver, the director, is trying for the tongue-in-cheek swashbuckling of the Princess Bride. I don't think anybody could say anything about this movie as tongue-in-cheek, but okay. But Ella Enchanted lacks that movie's storytelling boldness, and it doesn't have much to add to the old story of the put-upon girl who gets her prince. We know it's literally a fucking Cinderella story, and she should know what we've all found out. It's not a happily ever after. I, for one, love the giants and the special effects of the giants. Can we talk about the giants?
Okay, my biggest problem, though, with the special effects of the giants is that the scale is so, like, the scale of the humans to the giants changes so much. Like, they're not consistent.
Yeah, that I agree with. That's fair. That's a totally fair criticism. What I love is that, so, like, when I was reading this book, I was picturing the giants just as sort of, I guess I was picturing them in my mind more like ogres, like fairy tale kind of creatures, like big and like mythical looking as well. And what I love is that, like, they're just absolutely, well, I don't know if we could call Heidi Klum an absolutely normal person, but they're just basically absolutely normal people, but large. And I did not realize that was going to be the way before I saw the movie, and that is one of the things I have always loved about the movie, is that it's just like normal people, but very tall. And I just think it's the most weird and hilarious bit, and I love it. I love it so much.
I was into the giants. I thought that was pretty funny.
I agree with you, the scale changing from time to time. I understand why that it might have been easier in different places, because now that I'm thinking about it, you're right. Like, when she's hiding with them in the alleyway, she just looks more like a normal person. But, I love the giants. I think they're so funny. Okay, so a couple of quick blurbs of the low ratings before we transition into, the people on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Okay.
The Boston Globe gives it 1.5 stars, saying, a cheerless, over-calculated botch of the popular Gail Carson Levine book about a fairy tale girl who falls for a handsome prince while fighting to rid herself of a curse of obedience. I don't have it linked in here, but Gail Carson Levine has herself said in interviews, she's like, yeah, they changed a lot of things, but I think we can appreciate them just as, like, two separate sources, and that's fine. And so, like, even Gail Carson Levine doesn't really give that much of a shit about what
I'm sure she cared more about the royalty check.
I'm sure she did. And like what you said, you were pretty sure you saw the movie first and then you read the book. I don't think I read the book until I learned the movie was coming out, and then I recognized it was a book that I had heard about. So like I'm sure it did a lot of great sales for her book, as well as just like earning her monies for the movie.
Yeah, I also think we've already talked about, like, yeah, I mean, on the grounds of comparing, like, if the metric is how well it compares to the book, it doesn't. So, you know, which, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you can appreciate a movie and a book as two separate things. It is very satisfying when a movie feels like a good adaptation of a book. I will say, though, that they are two different mediums, and I don't think it's totally fair to expect them to translate that well.
I think the only way you ever get a successful book to screen translation is if it's like a series of some kind. And even
God, we could do an entire season on the BBC version of Jane Eyre.
Oh, of Jane Eyre!
I was going to say Jane Eyre.
Everyone always says the BBC Pride and Prejudice. Jane Eyre is the one with Timothy Dalton, right?
Yes.
And they have the actual scene where he dresses up as the fortune teller.
That miniseries is basically, like, you could basically read the book while watching the series.
I had never seen this, and at one point, I don't remember if it was during COVID or just like a weekend when we were very bored, but when we were roommates, Laura was like, I'm going to sit you down and make you watch all 6 hours of this. And I was like, okay.
Was it 6 or was it 8?
It might have been 8. I don't know. But I was a little hesitant at first. And then like 20 minutes in, I was like glued to the screen, like sold, say less. We watched the whole thing in one day. It was great.
There is no better Mr. Rochester than Timothy Dalton. He's so
I think it must have been after we watched Hot Fuzz, because he's in that too. And I'm sure that must have made you been like, you know what else about Timothy Dalton? Okay, so back to Ella Enchanted, who not starring Timothy Dalton, unfortunately.
Bummer.
The Philadelphia Inquirer gave it 2 stars, calling it a so-so Cinderella spoof. The Stuart News out of Stuart, Florida, wrote, without Hathaway, so again, a lot of people saying that she kind of carried this. Without Hathaway, this jokey revisioning of such bedtime stories would collapse under the weight of its overwhelming attempts at parody. The movie's mixture of storybook mythology with modern and pop references becomes too much as the story progresses, drawing attention to its own derivativeness.
I do agree that the casting is part of what makes the movie hold up over the years. Like, Anne Hathaway especially is magnetic and not kind of, but totally luminous. Yes. And I do think that there's delightful little bits of casting
Heidi Klum
in other roles too. Yes, that make it fun as well.
I agree. I don't, and you know, maybe I would have felt different if she wasn't cast in this, but I still find it hard to say like that her as that role is the only redeeming quality of the movie. You know. They finish up, young girls will be enchanted by Ella and Hathaway, but grown-ups will groan as the film tries too hard in nearly every area except special effects. Sick burn.
That actually is a really good burn.
I know, like, I don't necessarily agree with it entirely, but I'm also like, this is a sick burn, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get the treat of looking at the people who actually enjoyed it. Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times starts out in a way that you think is going to be kind of similar. I actually originally had this one grouped with the bad reviews, and then I was like reading it more thoroughly when I changed my mind. He starts out writing Ella Enchanted, a breezy take on Cinderella. I think that's a good a breezy take on Cinderella.
I know, actually, like, I love that phrasing. Yeah.
Is likely to cast its spell primarily on adolescent girls, while their elders might find it not just a little tedious in its familiarity.
We can confirm, yes.
And artificiality. Can confirm, yes. But again, he says like grown-ups probably won't like it. But then he actually goes on to give, I would say, a very fair review of the whole thing. Like, it's like exactly like we were talking about. It's clear it is not his cup of tea, but he sees the merit of it for other viewers. I love this kind of critic. This is the person that makes sense to me. He does say that it starts a bit slow but gains momentum, which honestly I would kind of agree with, and I think in the book too. It's
yeah.
But he comes to the following conclusion. Quote, by the time the film is over, its ancient fairy tale form has made the oppression of minorities seem all the more outmoded, as it has made equally clear that only Ella, drawing upon inner strength and resolve, can set herself free of her godmother's curse. It's a strong plus that Elwes, abated by his advisor, a cunning talking serpent, plays the villain with such an unabashed relish.
Wait, I'm sorry, you have to say relish with a rolled R because that's how he would say it.
I can't roll my R's.
I can't roll my R's either.
No, what are we going to do? I'm going to do that again, but I cannot roll my R's, but I'm going to try to make it sound as fancy as I possibly can without rolling my R, okay?
Okay, go for it.
It is a strong plus that Elwes, abated by his advisor, a cunning talking snake, plays the villain with such an unabashed relish.
That was a pretty good
Okay.
Carrie Elwes relish.
So it's good that he does that because, as he says, Ella's curse and Charmant's near-terminal naivete, which is going to come up in our tarot reading, tend to make them pretty bland for much of the movie. I don't know that I would agree with that, but I agree that Carrie Elwes as a villain is fucking stellar. He says, also on hand are Minnie Driver, seriously underused. Agreed. We could use more of Minnie Driver in this.
I do agree about that.
As Ella's spell-casting nursemaid, and Aidan McArdle as an elf who learns to be a lawyer. The requisite fantasy adventure elements, some mild humor, and spirited singing and dancing fill out Ella Enchanted. I like that. He's just like, it's this vibe, not mine. But if that's yours, go on, dig it.
I think that's a pretty fair review. And I have to say, like, I loved this movie when I was a kid. I was surprised with how well it held up as an adult. It was still entertaining and fun to watch. I think it tries really hard with, like, the satire and the, like, modern medieval vibe. I don't think that it ultimately is as sharp a tale as, like, you know, these types of movies that it owes its legacy to, like Shrek, and then like Princess Bride before Shrek, and then like Monty Python before all of them, all the way back in the 70s.
And like A Knight's Tale, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would put A Knight's Tale kind of on par with Ella Enchanted. I would say that Shrek and Princess Bride and Monty Python achieved a level of artistry that's not present in those movies, although they are still satisfying stories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to sort of switch gears from Ella Enchanted as a princess more specifically to like the early aughts princess vibe more generally, because as I said, that same year we had The Prince and Me, we had Shrek 2, we had A Cinderella Story, right? So Claudia Puig, I think is how you pronounce her name, I'm so sorry if that's wrong, also from the Gannett News Service, published an article titled Princesses with Power, Fairy Tales Take a Modern Twist, which is really interesting. Oh, okay, so this season of 2004, as I said, saw the release of not only Ella Enchanted, but also The Prince and Me. Later in the year, in the summer, The Princess Diaries 2 came out, as well as The Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff. So, like, it was kind of the vibe for the times. And she wrote, these modern romantic heroes are light years away from their fragile, distressed damsel predecessors. They are strong, plucky, and self-possessed, and the princes they fall for are open-minded, egalitarian, as well as hunky. The messages are of personal empowerment, not of needing rescue.
I like that. I think that is one of my favorite parts about it, is there's really good chemistry between Hugh Dancy and Anne Hathaway, but I also like that while on the one hand you have Hattie, who realizes that Ella has this strange compulsion to do what she's told and takes advantage of it. I like that Charmant also recognizes this compulsion and specifically says...
That wasn't in order?
It wasn't in order, and that I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I think that that's like
at one point he says, kiss me. And we hear the little like spling of like the magic working.
But it's a fainter sound effect than when you normally hear it, and you can kind of tell
she wanted
that
to,
she's like, yeah, that's
okay,
I want to do it.
Excuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is such a sweet moment. Ugh, I do love.
Yeah.
And that whole moment of them in front of the fire at the Giants' wedding is like, it's just it's a vibe.
And I think too, going back to what we talked about with the Princess Diaries and like a healthy example for little girls, like I think that it's a nice like relationship, nice empowering relationship dynamic. Yeah.
So later in this article, so they talk to Anne Hathaway and Julia Stiles, who was in A Prince and Me, The Prince and Me, sorry. And Hathaway is quoted later first of all, they call her the movie's reigning princess, as in like the movie industry, not just this film. And I thought that was kind of cute. I know we're going to talk about her like getting away from those roles in a minute, but I thought that was a really sweet way to refer to her at this time. And Hathaway says, I think we're bringing fairy tales to a new generation. When I was growing up, I was still getting the simpering, blander heroine. All of a sudden, there's these real characters girls have to look up to. They're not G-rated confections. There's this definite note of female empowerment. We've all seen Cinderella be the good, sweet girl that's kind of worshipped for her beauty, and that's kind of boring, but if you can give her a brain and a personality and a point of view, that just makes the story more enjoyable. And specifically, her comment about the simpering, bland heroine, low-key made me think of the song at the end of Cheetah Girls, which came out the year before, where they sing about, like, the princess who saves herself in the fairy tale. And that's been stuck in my head since I wrote this. Anyway, you were saying.
I think going all the way back to, like I said, like Ever After, if we kind of put that as like the starting point for this type of movie, there's a real trope forming of the tomboy princess. Like, definitely with Drew Barrymore's character there, even with Fiona in Shrek, with Mia and Ella, there's kind of, that's like tomboy princess vibe, I would kind of say, becomes popular. Where you can be effeminate, but you're also like, we know that they all like kick ass. Yeah.
Especially in the scene where Ella saves Slannon, he's just like shouting at her things to do, but because of the curse, he's like, uppercut, spin kick, and she's like actually doing these things like perfectly.
Right. Which is basically the same scene that Fiona does with Robin Hood in Shrek. And even in Ever After, I would say that a comparable scene, it's been a long time since I saw that movie, but I'd say that there's kind of a comparable moment where she rescues the prince from the, what they call them gypsies in that movie, but the Roma. And they tell her that she can take whatever she can carry. And so she literally picks up the prince and walks away with him. And they're so delighted by that. They actually are like, come back, we'll give you like a horse and stuff.
So finally, I mean, not entirely finally, we are going to jump into the IMDb reviews as I love them and talk about some tarot. But to wrap up kind of the critical reception, there was this great interview with Anne Hathaway by Evan Henderson of the Los Angeles Daily News. What I like about this is, like, there's not a ton in here about Ella Enchanted itself, but just some cool things about Anne Hathaway. Like, the whole first, like, column of the article is just him joking about how fast she talks. And, like, also, like, her talking about how she's like, I know I talk too fast. Gary Marshall was always complaining on the Princess Diaries set. Like, it's a thing I still have not figured out how to fix.
She most has of the time, an iconic cadence.
Yes. And she's like, most of the time when we have to do retakes, it's literally just because I'm talking so fast you can't understand me. And so I thought that was really sweet.
Like what you're doing right now.
Yes, I do. I loved this because I was like, oh my god, when I used to do theater when I was younger, that was my big thing, is they would always be like, it's great, slow the fuck down.
I said I was too quiet.
Did you get a whole, like, the director in the back holding their hand up to their ear or yelling, project?
Yes, I got a lot of project.
Okay, so yeah, there's just some cool things in here I want to bring up about Anne Hathaway's career to this point, which we've already kind of touched on, and about, like, her two princess roles close together. This article brings up some of her upcoming roles, so that she'll soon be in, quote, Ang Lee's Brokeback Mountain with Jake Gyllenhaal, in which she plays a 1960s Texan, complete with huge hair, who ages from 20 to 40. So that's coming out later in, a future season. And then they go on to say, there's also the Barbara Koppel film Havoc, written by Stephen Gangan, in which Anne Hathaway plays a member of a girl gang and goes topless. Hathaway expects the film, which has no release date yet, to change audiences' perceptions of her and her image. About this kind of career shift, Ella Enchanted's director, Tommy O'Haver, said, I do think it's important for her to do more mature roles so she doesn't get stuck in the princess thing. I think she's going to go far, which is super sweet. Henderson wraps up saying, Quote, but with Ella Enchanted in theaters and the Princess Diaries sequel due this summer, Hathaway figures to have the image and role model questions brought up afresh. She's heard them before, but confesses, I never know what people mean. I try not to disappoint people, namely my parents, and I find the role model labels incredibly flattering, but ultimately I can't live my life based on the hopes that people are inspired by my actions. I'd feel very phony. Which is, I think, the most regal and princessy things she's ever said. But also very true.
I mean, it's interesting that she says, because it almost feels like if she intentionally did that, it would almost be ego-driven, like that she wants people to look to her instead of, it's almost the fact that it is coming from this place of humility that's part of what makes it appealing. Yeah. So,
to move us into my favorite section, which is our IMDb reviews.
Oh boy.
We've got another, same as the critical reviews, fun mishmash of vibes. Somebody wrote, boy, I'm glad I saw this movie before reading the comments here. Because there's a lot of that are really negative. One is titled, This Almost Works.
Ouch.
Another one says, winner of the worst adaptation ever award.
I think there are probably a few worse adaptations out there. I'm willing to bet.
But then we kind of pivot. Someone wrote, how can you not love it? And then, oh no, I had another bad one in here. I forgot. An abomination and waste of a superb story. And then finally, wonderfully sweet and thoroughly enjoyable. It's like a live-action Shrek.
So I'm curious, I think ending on the live-action Shrek brings us up again. But well, no, I'm going to make you tell us your thoughts because I'm going to ask a question.
That's not your job this time.
What do you think about the obsession with the Cinderella story? Like, what do you think about the obsession with fairy tale retellings in general, but specifically the Cinderella story?
Laura, I'm so glad you asked, because that was actually the subject of my master's thesis from Mississippi State University.
Wait, was it really? No, I did not. How did I not know that? No.
That was the subject of my critical paper for my master's thesis for my creative writing degree at Mississippi State University. I was specifically inspired by the poetry collection Transformations by Anne Sexton, which is retelling fairy tales, as well as The Well Speaks of Its Own Poison by Maggie Smith, which is another one that retells fairy tales. And I just chose to kind of do a slightly different version of it by retelling Greek mythology. So I know I write a lot of poems like that. That's where that came from. So the conclusion I came to in my thesis was that these are stories that are formulaic and familiar. And so they are a representation of safety and comfort, even if the story itself, some of the original fairy tales are pretty fucking gory, like Hans Christian Andersen, the Little Mermaid turns into sea foam, and a lot of the Grimm brothers are, grim. Even if they have a really shocking or terrible ending, how we get there is familiar. We know the plot. We can follow the breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel. And so the reason of retelling them is to kind of recast it in a way where we get to rewrite the grim ending, but we, whereas doing something completely different might require a level of bravery or courage we don't necessarily have. By housing it in the similar story, it's a way that lets us, and I kind of interpreted this as viewers, why we like retellings of these stories so much. I couldn't necessarily say why Hollywood's super obsessed with it, but as a viewer, as a reader, why I think we like this kind of retelling so much is because the story itself is housed in a place that we feel safe and comfortable to be able to do the brave thing and get to the ending that is different, where the heroine succeeds in a different way.
Interesting. Well, for one thing, Hollywood loves remakes.
And also just Hollywood, you're so right.
I think it's interesting that you talk about how it's changing the ending to be a happy ending in a lot of these fairy tale retellings. And, the Cinderella story, I guess, technically has a happy... I don't really remember the original Cinderella.
So, and I couldn't say like the original written Cinderella.
I know that there are
but
toes cut off.
yes. I do the actual like 1960s or 1950s or whatever Disney Cinderella has become one of my comfort movies lately, just because it's very visually beautiful. Like the artwork.
Oh, I
in
love
the
backgrounds in those
is
old Disney movies.
Stunning. I like how the music of that movie is very like of the time. It's very like 50s style music. I could give a shit about the story. But like, yeah, so I it is technically like a happy ending. Like she gets the prince in the end, but it's not a happy ending for like necessarily like viewers, like modern viewers, because like, okay, the way she gets it in the end is she remains kind of silent. She gets it by like kind of not doing much. She just is quiet and nice and smiles, and that's how she gets her award in the end. And that's not something that I think we as modern viewers appreciate or want to do. We don't want to be told to be quiet and smile and you'll get your reward. And so these, I would say, are like quote unquote happier for modern audiences, because like Ella is not quiet and smiling. She is actively fighting for her own agency and her own freedom. In a Cinderella story, you know, she has the great moment that we all love where she's like, waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought. Useless, or whatever. And you know, in these retellings, the endings are the same of like the prince gets the girl gets the prince, or whatever, but the path to getting there is altered enough that it's something that we can vibe with more.
Interesting, because so something that I was thinking about after watching this movie was also about that fairy tale happily ever after ending. And I struggled with it a little bit because I felt like after you do all this work to set up this character who is fighting for independence and agency, and then expanding that metaphor to work for the oppression of the people and minorities and oppression based on various socioeconomic structures, to have her then ultimately, like, on the one hand, okay, she gets the prince and she gets to be a princess, and it's kind of like she was rewarded for standing up for what she believes in and for speaking out. On the other hand, to me, it actually feels like taking what could be subversive ideas and folding them into what we accept as a society, because really she's given the very traditional ending of for all of her independence she gets marriage, and she so there's, to me, it's a little bit of like, and now we've brought her, and she gets marriage and she gets power in a very traditional power structure where she gets to be the princess. And so it's kind of like, at the end of the day, she hasn't really subverted the structure of society. And by trying to be outspoken, she's rewarded by being brought into it, which in some ways you could actually see as a like stymieing of her power. Is that a word? Did I just make up a word?
No, I think that makes sense. I think what's interesting is I think we both are floating around the same concept of like the palatability of the story is why it keeps going on and on.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, speaking of tropes, do we have some tarot?
We do have some tarot. You'd be so proud of me. I actually did these ahead of time instead of remembering like 5 minutes beforehand or in the moment where you were like, do you have tarot cards? So we are prepared.
Tarot.
So I have chosen just two. We're going to go with Ella and Char. Because I think they are... they like ideas for like cards for them just like literally like just jumped out at me. It felt like very clear what I wanted to highlight of their characters in the cards. So for Ella, we have the High Priestess. Upright, it signifies intuition and knowledge, which Ella has in abundance. She's smart, she's driven, she wants to be an advocate for the people who need one. What I think is It works for her in both ways. Reversed, it signifies secrets, you know? And obviously she's got a pretty big one to contain. What I learned recently, I didn't really know this about this card, is that the High Priestess is usually seen as a person who can, like, travel between the veil of different worlds. But I see it here
like
as...
through mirrors.
Like through mirrors. Well, I see it here as Ella kind of understanding the world from many different viewpoints. So, like, when it comes to some of her beliefs, she can seem a little, like, on her high horse, like, say no to Ogreside, stop the giant land grab, you know? But she is willing to listen and learn, I think, when she's wrong. Like, I think there's a really interesting conversations when she does, like, her and Slanna do come across the ogres, and she's like, I just want to help you, and they just have a really neat, like, meeting of the minds, I think. It's probably a lot more stressful than it should otherwise be, because they're, like, also going to eat her, but... And then for Char, we have the Six of Cups. So this card is all about, like, the keywords for this card are, like, kind, naive.
Yep,
exactly, yeah. So Char is very generous. He's willing to give help without expectation of anything in return, you know, which is an exact contrast to the way Edgar behaves. Some of these things are a sign that he will be a good ruler when he eventually gets there, but, like, it also is significant, like, a significant reference to his naivete, which can be really his downfall. He really does see the best in everyone, including his uncle, to the point where, like, he overlooks these red flags that are right in front of him and spends half the movie going, I'm sure my Uncle Edgar didn't know anything about this. And it's like, well, he's kind of in charge of shit. How do you think it happened if he didn't know?
He also is naive because, as Ella has to point out multiple times, he's about to be coronated king himself, so he needs to actually take the responsibility too.
He doesn't have to say, like, I'll talk to my uncle about this. He's like, and it's like, well, you can also make those changes yourself. And yeah, he forgets that a lot, that he's about to be the fucking king. So yeah, that's what we have for tarot.
Well, I had one last question, kind of thinking about that happy ending. I think some of the implication, and this is the same with Ever After too, is the idea that once the Cinderella character gets to marry the prince, then she's going to be in a position of power where she can actually make changes. But will she be? You know, like, I think that's something, I think that's also a really interesting thing, like, looking at this movie that's, you know, 20 plus years old now. I don't know that in this day and age we can look at that and go, yeah, now she has the power and can do the good thing. I think I feel very jaded about positions of power at this point.
I think it's interesting to continue to consider how this came out in the same time as The Prince and Me, because that's kind of a pivotal. Did you ever see The Prince and Me?
Yes, but I can't really remember it anymore.
So, like, you know, they end up together in the end. I forget exactly how they work it out, and there's, like, sequels and stuff, but the pivotal point of, like, you know, the initial, like, breakup moment that they have to begin with, before, you know, the like, climactic point of the movie is because she's like, I want to be a doctor. I can't do that if I'm here and I'm just, like, the woman who has to walk 2 steps behind you for the rest of your life. And so she leaves him, and they end up figuring out how to make it work at some point. I don't remember exactly what it is. Maybe they don't. I don't know. It's some, like, early aughts fairy tale bullshit kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, like, it's interesting to consider that with, like, this same time of, like, is she even going to be able to do anything? Because, yeah, you're right. We don't know. We have no guarantee. I think in the world of Ella Enchanted of the movie, I want to say yes, because it feels like that kind of place where it would be very easy to be like, yeah, no, I'm just the pretty face. That's my wife. She's in charge of shit. Go talk to her. But
that sounds like a fairy tale.
Exactly,
doesn't it?
It does. Like, that's what I'm saying. I think it's only possible in the world of Frell specifically, as it is portrayed in the movie, and not really anywhere else.
I think, though, going back to what I was saying earlier about how, you know, it feels like this is actually anti-subversive because you have a character who's supposed to be outspoken and supposed to have unique ideas and the ability to think independently, and she's ultimately brought into the power structures that she's fighting. And so is that real power if she's just folded into the power structures she's trying to push against? And I think part of what makes Shrek a more compelling movie is they go back to his swamp and he continues to exist outside of
and Fiona
this
continues
feudal
to be an
society.
ogre. Yeah.
Yes. what's interesting, and I can't really, because again, like we're talking about movies that I watched as a kid and I don't really remember. What is interesting is that 3 years later, when Ella Enchanted comes out and Shrek 2 comes out, I think that outsider ogre vibe shifts in Shrek 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember what happens at the end, but I think it shifts.
Yeah. Well,
who becomes... Because don't they... What happens at the end of Shrek 2?
Well, so in the middle, they do the happily ever after potion, and he turns it... They all turn into humans, because he thinks that's what Fiona wants, and then they get all turned back at the end when the spell is over.
So they do get to go back to their swamp,
They do get to go back
ultimately.
to the swamp and continue living their lives as they want. Yeah, but he just has a crisis of confidence because he finds her journal, and it has the Mrs. Fiona Charming, Mrs. Fiona Charming, Mrs. Fiona Charming bit. And he's like, oh God, what have I done? I've ruined her life. And like his parents, or her dad hates him, and all that, John Cleese silliness.
Yeah.
My final thought was that I did not honestly make the connection about this until I finished watching it all the way through, but this is actually feels very Once Upon a Mattress also in terms of fairy tale retellings, which I thought was kind of funny and silly.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
There was a movie version. I don't think it got like a huge release, but it's a play, and that I was in high school. But it's the Princess and the Pea retelling.
Oh, okay.
And it's very cute and very ridiculous and silly. In the film, in one of the original like Broadway productions of it, Carol Burnett plays the princess, which I feel like explains all you need to know about the character. Also, what you were saying about like being folded into the systems of power. Did you ever read the book Just Ella by Margaret Peterson Haddix?
I don't think so, but that book sounds really familiar.
It's another Cinderella story.
I might have read it and I might just not remember.
It's really good, and it I think interrogates those questions that you're asking in a really meaningful way, because she doesn't end up folded into the positions of power and with the prince, but she does end up in a place where she can do work that she really cares about.
Love it. Yeah. May we all end up in a place where we can do work that we really care about.
Well, on that note, you can find your Silver Nitrate Witches on various online platforms at LJ Valenza and at Bellang303. Thanks to Fine Motor for the use of their songs Highway Moon and Movie. You can check out more about the band at finemotormusic.com. Thanks for listening. Stay witchy.